Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of our Postscript, where I try to reflect a little bit on this past week's service. Sometimes I also share some new things that have arisen for me, but today I want to prioritize a section of my sermon that focused on this notion of an equitable measure. And for many of us, we are still trying to live into an experience and a practice of equity. Some of you will have probably seen the cartoon that has 3 kids wanting to watch a baseball game. And one kid is really short, and then there's another kid probably halfway between the shortest and the tallest. And they're peering over a fence to watch a baseball game. And each of them is standing on a little raised platform. Now that little raised platform is sufficient for the tallest to clear the fence to where he can see the baseball game. But for the other 2 kids, that same platform, let's call that equality, right? Equal sized platforms, doesn't accomplish the justice of having all 3 kids being able to actually see the baseball game. There's another picture just to the right of the one that I just described to you. And in that picture, you have the tall kid that's on that platform, just like in the previous picture. But then you have adjusted platforms for the other 2 children that are higher, that give them the opportunity to see the game as well. They're all able to experience the beauty of the baseball game that they all wanted to see. That's what equity is. I think that communicates equity visually and conceptually better than anything else. It's about providing people with the opportunity, and you can't provide them with the opportunity if you're allowing for these disparate advantages to exist for some people. I think many of us are told that how we start off is all on some sort of equal, I call it a playing field, right? Since I did just use the baseball game as an analogy. But we know that's not true. In fact, this last Sunday, I described something called a privilege walk. There's lots of examples of this. There's different activities you can do that demonstrate that some people get to start way beyond where others get to start in this life. When the Apostle Paul is writing about a measure of faith that is given to each, Paul is making a statement about justice and equity. What Paul is saying in this letter to the church in Rome is that each person is given sufficient gifts by God to share in community, and that they should all be honored, listened to, and received and supported. If we only lift up some gifts, or if we privilege these and don't even acknowledge these, then the community is not brought together as one. It will remain divided. It will not support those with greatest needs. It certainly won't achieve the equity which God is always about. If God were not about equity, there wouldn't be these constant refrains, whether it's in the prophetic text, the Psalms, the wisdom literature of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, the Gospels, or the Pauline letters. Throughout the biblical text, there are these stories about those who are starting off high and those who are starting off low, and God's going to bring them closer together, right? That's why God takes down the exalted and lifts those who have been made lowly, lifts those who have been humbled. That's what Mary's sermon, the first sermon in the Christian scriptures, is about. The Magnificat, right? Elevating those who have been historically underserved and displaced. So, a measure of faith given to all of us in order to support the thriving community that we get to belong to as a gift from God. Equity is indispensable if we want to have that thriving community here at First St. Andrews in London, Ontario, in our world. If we want to achieve a just peace, then we have to give all that we can. We have to share our gifts, the just measure that we've been given, so that all have an opportunity to experience and participate in the blessings of God, just like those 3 kids that wanted to watch the baseball game. I hope that by reflecting on that and lifting that passage from Romans 12 and placing it in that light, that you're better able to understand not only equity, but our part in making sure we live in a more equitable and just world as people of faith. Thanks for joining me this week. Look forward to seeing you next week.